Hello everyone, welcome back. Tonight I've decided we were going to have a little bit of fun with C#. It's an idea I've wanted to look at for a little while, so I figured it would be a fun thing to poke at on stream. But before I get to that, a couple quick announcements, and let me change my screen. First of all, I am now a Get Kraken ambassador. So for anybody who watches my stream regularly, you've probably seen me use it a lot and sing its praises, so not a huge shock to too many people that I absolutely love it, and was invited to join the ambassador program and was very happy to accept. Basically, the Get Kraken ambassadors are people who are really passionate about teaching people how to use Git, and specifically using Get Kraken, and that really aligns with what I enjoy doing. Specifically for Hacktoberfest this year, for the month of October, you will probably see me do a bunch of streams or videos related to Git and Get Kraken. A little bit more introductory for anybody who is interested, especially since a big portion of Hacktoberfest is trying to get people who are not used to being involved in open source software to go through and contribute. One more announcement. There is a .NET user group. So this one here, and I will drop the link. Should have had this open ahead of time. Boom. So my boss, Mark Michaelis, who is a Microsoft Regional Director, CEO of Intelitech, i.e. my boss, and myself are going to be giving a talk on nullability, specifically nullable reference types inside of C#. So this is going to be a little bit of an introduction to the feature, so if you're unfamiliar with it, no prior knowledge of this is needed. So if you are at all interested, feel free to check it out. We're currently planning on it being in person. However, with the COVID situation and keeping track of everything, that's still a little bit up in the air. There will be an online stream as well. And in case anybody is watching the recording of this well into the future and realize that it is long after September 14th and you've missed it, the recording will make it up onto Intelitech's YouTube page. So you can see several of the past user groups recordings that have made it up there. If you didn't check out the one about how REST wrecks microservices, so there was a little bit of a typo in the name there, this is an excellent one to go and check out. So if you are at all interested, and then while you're there, subscribe, because there's not a lot there currently, but we're working on putting up more. Okay, on the note of giving talks and presentations, my idea for tonight. I have wanted to go through and give a talk sort of highlighting all of the kind of weird esoteric things you can do in C#. Not necessarily normal things that tend to be a little more out there, things that you probably shouldn't do in normal software development. Basically all of the fun stuff that you can't do in your day job because it's either too convoluted or it's just bad, horrible practice and no one should ever do it anyway. That's the stuff I'd like to play with tonight. So specifically what I'm looking to do is build up a small application. I'm thinking something very simple, maybe command line app that takes in maybe a name and a date and calculate a name and a birthday and calculates your age. Stupid simple. That's the idea, is to have it be as simple as possible and have the code behave as completely surprising and unpredictable as possible. That's what we're going for, is kind of the weird out there stuff. So to give you an idea of what I mean. So when I say bad stuff, and I'll drop the link to this in here as well. So I started to kind of make a list of this. And if anybody has watched some of John Skeep's talks, he's got one for, and actually I'll just share this as well, called Evil Code. He's got a whole bunch of examples and great stuff in here. And some of these are useful, some of these are a little less useful for what I'm hoping to accomplish, because some of these are tied to either particular versions of the compiler, maybe particular idiosyncrasies of a version of .NET, and I'm kind of looking to abandon that to some degree, or at least update these things to latest. I'm not going to go C# 10 or anything fancy, but at least C# 9 bring in some fun stuff with like source generators and that kind of thing. Module initializers are another fun one that we will probably go through and play with. So I've started to compile a list of things that could happen, and the list I compiled actually had links in it, and when I copied and pasted, these things dropped. So for example, and I'll drop this one again. And so a lot of these things very much based on some stuff that John Skeet has done. So for example, being able to do some fun stuff like this where you get to abuse culture info in order to make a string behave very differently. You can imagine if we are printing out, say, birthdays, this was done in the context of SQL, but it's not a big leap to change it to doing something else. So a few things like that I think will be quite fun. So let's get started. Let's see how much of this we can do. So step one, let's just build a normal console application. And we need a name for this, and that is not the directory I want. That one. Console app 4, though an exciting name, does not match with what I kind of had in mind. Let me look, because I had done a little searching on GitHub for available repo names. Let me just check here. Yeah, calamities. Not currently taken. And a better way to check if a repo's taken is you come in here and you go, whoop, currently available. Sweet. So we're going with it. We will call our app calamities, because if that doesn't indicate how badly we are going to make some stuff go wrong, I don't know what will. Okay. So let's go there. Net 6 preview. There's no problem with going with Net 5. Let's go there. There's nothing on my list that would be Net 6 or Net 5 difference between the twos. Today's Invisible Mountain Dew brought to you by Green Screen. Okay. So let's start with something kind of simple. And normally with a console application, the first thing I'm going to do is bring in System Command Line. Obviously, it is an awesome command line library for people unfamiliar with it. Let's just go and look. Boom. This guy here. So if you are unfamiliar with System Command Line, check it out. Totally awesome. Lots of cool stuff happening here. It actually powers the .NET CLI for Net 6. So if you need a reason to use it, it was good enough for the .NET CLI. How bad could it be? Okay. But in this case, we are looking to go as simple as possible. So we are going to do something var name gets console. How about read line? Do that. And how about console write line? Please enter your name. And then how about console write line? Please enter your birthday. String. And actually, so I'm setting some of these up for some intentional abuse. We'll get to that in a minute. So string birthday gets console read line, and then if date time try parse birthday out date time. Let's see, birthday date time. Sure, that'll work. Let's see. Let's go with var. No, how about time span age gets let's see, date time dot now minus birthday date time, console write line You are, let's see, age, total, oh, it's not going to give me, there's no total years. Which kind of makes sense. It's the easiest way to get years out of this thing. What is the easiest way to get years out of this thing? How about we just change the requirements? And rather than displaying years, we're going to do this. So how about else console error right line failed to parse birthday. That seems like a simple app. Let's make sure it works. Testing and all of that kind of jazz. Gotta actually make sure that the code works. Oh. Hang on. I just realized we went to all that effort to read in the name and then we never used it. Let's see. So how about name? There. Let's try this again. It is also worth mentioning I am not interested in necessarily having this be perfect. So we say my name will be Kevin. Be big. Please enter your birthday. Let's not actually put in the real one. 420 sounds good. I am really old. 12,000 days. Not quite, but it's close. Okay, so that kind of works. Great, cool. Okay, so code works. So step one, add to source control. Let's just put this thing out there. Let's see, GitHub, a simple repository that does very, very bad things with C#. And we will not make it private. This could be public. Like I said, I intend to use this for a talk later, but there's no reason this can't be public. Okay, so there's all of that. Did it create and push? Oh, it wants me to sign in. Sign in. Gotta do the sign in thingy. Authorize credential manager. Just gonna move that to a separate screen real quick. And did we sign in? I think we did. I'm gonna just confirm that the repo does exist. So the repo does in fact exist. Huzzah. Okay. And more importantly, there's a reasonable git ignore and all that jazz. We'll add more to this later and make it a prettier repo with a readme and all that stuff. That's for a later point. Right now, we want to do bad things with C#. Okay, so back to the list. So which of these lovely things, and I kind of set up, let's just start at the top. We can declare our own class named var. That sounds kind of fun. So let's start with that. So the intent is when doing this talk is I will likely not do it in Visual Studio because the IntelliSense and compiler helpfulness is kind of the opposite when you're trying to show off bad things that you can do. So let's do class var. Yeah, see, this is going to be fun already. You see, so the subtle hint that you can tell already out the gate. Var is no longer blue. So let's do this. If we turn this off, you'll note it's very subtle, that blue disappears and becomes green. This is one of those things where it's not going to quite work. Now, the next problem, in order to get this thing to even work, we need to actually, console readline is going to give us a string back. So we have two choices here. One, we let this thing convert from a string, which we can do. Option two, we completely abuse console readline and have it not return a string. Because most developers reading this code would probably assume that it behaves in a sane manner. Again, our goal is to make it not behave in a sane manner, as insane as absolutely possible. Let's just have it convert from a string. Well, one thing at a time. So let's see, public static implicit operator var string. So we can do that. But I think let's actually capture it. So how about private string original value. So for reference, this is one of the prime reasons why keywords better than type names. So new var cento byte offset. Thank you for following. I appreciate it. We're having fun being really, really bad with C#. It's pretty fun. I enjoy it. Okay, so let's see. So this we'll just do object initializer, put that guy in there, and then I think the last thing we're going to do is this is going to be a temporary thing. This is going to be temporary. So override toString. So if we override the toString, we need a random name that's not Kevin. How about thinking. Let's have it return Bob, because Bob is a perfect name. So we're going to have it do that. Okay, so now if we run our code, this is going to be fun. This is where the fun begins. So we're going to go Kevin 420. Let the fun begin. Okay, step 1, complete abuse of var. Done. Okay, move to type, and then we're going to go 1 second here. I'd like to open a repo, dev, and sorry, I have to find my repo. ABC. There it is. Okay. And let's make it bigger. Boom. Okay, so we are going to go through adding var. Adding var abuse. That sounds fine. Commit changes. Push that beast up. And there we go. Okay, so that's step 1. So we got var done. I don't know if this is quite what I want to do. I don't know if we want to do this. I don't know if we want to do this. Hijack toString. Override a method, implicit type converter. We could go this route to continue with our var, so bypass the toString there to do something different. Let's do this one next, type resolution. So you'll note I very specifically used capital string here. So imagine what happens when we do this. Very similar approach to what we just did. So let's convert this into a big name string, and then we're gonna hold on to the original one. I'm not using it right now, but I have a suspicion I'm gonna want it later. Let's see. This needs to be string. And then try parse wants what? It has a lot of overloads, so we can do something interesting here. We could let ourselves be converted back to a string. Or we could do something different and go to like a read-only span. Let's just go back to a string. I don't know if it really makes a big difference. So we're going to go the other direction. So in C#, if it wasn't clear, you can override the conversion operators. And there's two of them. There's the implicit conversion operator, which is what's happening, say, right here, because this returns a string. If I were to do something like this, this is now an explicit operator. So rather than implicit, you put explicit, and away you go. Okay? There we go, and string there, and string there. So now I just need to go the other direction. And I think in this case, we're going to intentionally return 420. So, more importantly, remember we put this guy in before, so Kevin and 1/1/2021. I'm loving it already. I'm loving it already. This is going to be perfect. And we'll just use a discard there because we're going to throw it away. Move you out. Move to string. Boom. Okay. Push that. Let's see. Adding example of hijacking of, how about writing string? Boom. Okay, so let's go back and see what else we can do here, because these are some of this is kind of low-hanging fruit. Name of with a dynamic variable, that's going to get a little more interesting. Deconstruction, that's something that I might want to change the code to leverage. So this is based on this little bit here. So drop that in. Again, John Skeet, awesome stuff. He also leverages the using static to get some fun bits out of this, because you'll note this is a date time object and it's being deconstructed here. So if we look at date time extensions, depending on these pound ifs defined, the order in which this date will be deconstructed into its values will change, because I'm in the United States and here we typically write it month, day, year, which admittedly doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's the standard form that at least Americans are used to seeing it. In other parts, people go through and write it day, month, year, which makes a little more conceptual sense. You start with the little thing and then a little bit bigger, then a little bit bigger. So that works. That's fine. And then and so this thing here will deconstruct in different manners. And I'm wondering if we can throw in a little object deconstruction just for fun. Just for fun. And I'm wondering if this might be a good place to do it. This might not be a bad place to do it, because I think we could break this apart and then leverage this. So we could come in here, var days, months, years. Oh, we can't do var here anymore, can we? Or can we? Deconstruction var form disallows specific type for var. So let's go here. Let's we may run into there. This is one of the things I was wondering about, is how many of these was I going to get myself in trouble with by having them conflict. And this might be a case where I just need to work out the script for this talk. I think I can make it work. I think we can make it work regardless. So let's do this. Static class time span extensions, and let's do let's look. What did we do here? So this was just deconstruct and then out into the various parts. Yeah, I'll just grab this because this is a reasonable starting signature. Thank you, John Skeet. You are awesome. So this is going to be time span. This is going to be days, months, years. And for now, we're just going to return. Let's see. So what was the... Or actually, I guess what we do is we just do days gets 42. Months gets 2. Years gets 35. Just making stuff up. Okay, so cannot implicitly convert from type int. Wonder, is there another way I can do this? So I think I have, if I turn this off, that now works. But it only works if I leave it like that. If as soon as I put var back, there's no way I can do something really, really bad, is there? Deconstruction farm. Unnecessary assignment. Yeah, I get that. I'm kind of curious. Sorry, what? I'm getting an error. CS8136. Let's see. CS8136. It's gotta be in here. 8136. Let's see. You can't specify a type outside the parentheses. So we could do something like this and leave it in. So rather than deconstructing directly into this, let's do this. Int days. If we do that, we can then deconstruct like that. And now I can have both enabled at the same time. Yes. Yes. How about years, months, and days old. Yeah, that works. This might be a little bit of a surprising line to people, not understanding how we got from what is clearly a time span to 3 ints. But part of the point of this talk is to explore what C# can do, because some of these things, like this one, have legitimate uses. Just not in this program. This program is all about illegitimate usages. To do, what should these be? Okay, so we're going to do that, and I'm going to move you out like that. So that's a little better. So let's go back here. We'll push that. So adding example of extension method deconstruction. And so this was part of my comment about we're going to leverage some of the newer C# features, because that is a fairly new feature that a lot of people are sort of only just now beginning to leverage. It's fairly popular with value tuple, because it makes it it gives you an opportunity with value tuples to, like, inside of a for each, deconstruct into a value tuple that then ends up being two locals inside of your for each, which is great. Oftentimes that's exactly what you want. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit different. Okay, so let's close this down. Don't need you anymore. Back to here. Close you both up. Preprocessor directives and multi-line comments. Lazy formattable string. This could be fun. This could be very, very fun. Let's oh, I've got module initializers in here twice. Let's fix that. Should probably fix some of my links too. But let's turn this off. So let's do module initializers, because that's another one. Update secret gist. So C# module initializer, because this is one that's going to be able to enable a little bit more fun for us. So what we need is something that looks like this. So let's just create a new file, and we'll call it init, and then we will paste that in. So one thing to call out right away, this is not inside of a namespace. Now in C#, everything's inside of a namespace, but what is not always clear is that there is a global level namespace, and you can put things there, which is what we're going to do here. Okay, now with module initializers in C#, these things get hit before any of your code starts. Okay, so we're going to do this to have even more fun. So for example, this guy is here. This guy's name is Bob. We're going to do, let's see, private static void, or actually let's do this. Let's go up here and change this. First of all, we are going to change Bob into Joe. I don't ever recommend doing this, ever. This is not a feature you want to rely on, but we are going to use it. Allow unsafe code. Boom. Okay. So there is something to know about the way strings work inside of C#. When you have string constants, what ends up happening, especially if you declare the same string constant in multiple places in your application. So for example, this is a string constant. It's just the literal string, Bob. What C# will do in order to preserve space and performance is it will what's called string interning. If we look here, C# string intern. String intern, no. This one might have a good, so you can intentionally intern a string, but not quite what we're looking for. The key part is that an intern string will end up having, it'll get saved inside of a table that then it can be looked up. The problem is when you enable unsafe code, strings can then be mutated. Or to maybe put it a different way, the value at the reference that the string is pointed to can be mutated. So if I can get a reference to that intern string, I can then mutate the data inside of it and change that string. This is fun. as an example, let me grab, there's a sample repo I have. Let's see. If anybody wants to play with it, there is a repo I put out that basically shows a similar thing. So inside of here, there's a test. And the goal is to turn assert r equal, turn Kelly into Chris. So you know, this is a constant string, and I can make this test pass by only modifying the contents of these methods. And the reason is this assert passes. This is not surprising to anybody, right? Constant equals value, which is the same one. But in here, I believe there's a solution branch. You can come down here and do things like this. And you can do unsafe code, get a reference to this to the source there, and mutate it. Now, obviously, this is unsafe and pointers and all of the usual warnings that go along with it. Again, don't do this in your code. Don't necessarily rely on this behavior for anything of significance. But this is exactly what we're going to do. This is exactly what we're going to do. We are going to leverage that. So inside of here, what we are going to do, let's see, const string name Bob. So you'll note all I've done is get myself nice little access to Bob. Let's see. Target. Oh, const string new name will be Joe. And you'll note I'm very intentionally picking values that just happen to line up. Because if you don't, you have to deal with null terminating the strings and walking off the end of your arrays and all that stuff. I don't want to deal with that. I just want to show off the fact that I can do it. Okay, so this should now successfully change Bob into Joe on our output. So we've now double hijacked ourselves, which will be pretty awesome. So obviously I type in Kevin, and then 1/1/2021. Oh, it didn't work. It didn't work. Let's confirm this. Did get into here. We might need to ensure that the string is interned. If I go back here one more, you can do this. Let's see, string, who am I? Let's just check some of these things. So string is interned. Name. Well, I guess we'll just do this on the immediate window. We'll test it there. So ding ding. Okay, so immediate window, string is interned, name. Wait, what? This is interned? What? Okay, so let's start with there. String intern. Boom, boom, boom. I wonder if because I declared it. Oh, I bet you because I declared it a const, it probably ended up changing that. Yeah, so we don't care about that too much. Let's let it go. Please enter your name, Kevin11.20. Did not update. Interesting. Kind of want to check the value of name here. Name has been updated to Joe, but that would mean then that this one here string I wonder if that's the problem. Let's take a run at that, because I'm wondering if that lambda body member does not behave the way I expect. Just possible. This is why you should never rely on this behavior. I guess it doesn't matter what I enter there. We're hijacking the value anyway and throwing it away. It's not... Boy, how do I make this... How do I make this work? I'm not hijacking myself twice, am I? No, name is there. Name is still coming back as Bob, which is interesting to me. Why? Something is not behaving the way I expect, and this may... It could be related to newer changes. Let's check this, because I'm making a sweeping assumption that both of these get changed. That one's changed. That one's changed. Oh. I bet you I'm doing this too early in the chain. var doesn't exist yet. So I'm changing this string, which is ending up making it a different string. Oh. It's interesting, this one. It's interesting this doesn't pick up the var here. Oh, it's because I'm inside of a global namespace. Okay, so let's move this guy into the global namespace. I mean, we're hijacking var. Why not hijack all var? There we go. Why not? I wonder if this fixes it. So that's Bob. Now it's Joe. Ha! Okay, so now I think we can get away with something a little bit more exciting. Now that we understand what was going on. So I believe the issue was this thing hadn't been initialized yet. And so by the time it got here, the string had already been changed. I think we can go back to this. So let's relaunch and just confirm. We go here. That shows Bob. That shows job. Excellent. That's now Joe. Interesting that name shows Bob. I wonder if that's just a caching issue local. But I think I need to leave myself a comment. Ensure var is initialized. Boom. Enter your name. Kevin. I guess it really doesn't matter. So that's pretty cool for Joe. That is very cool for Joe. So this will be a fun little module initializer to leave sitting in there. Again, all kinds of things you should never do in your code. Adding module initializer that changes string constant. Okay. That's kind of fun. Okay, so let's go back to the list. What else sounds fun? Oh, we didn't do any asynchronous stuff, so I can't use getAwaiter. So we did do this. Can I change this? Is this thing hip to the idea of, if I do that? Is there a preview on here? Doesn't look like an update. Will you let me? No, I'm not overly surprised, but I was kind of hoping. Where is it? That? I'm trying to remember what the task list in GitHub. Oh, there it is. Boom. There. That's what I wanted. Edit. Okay. So what I want to do is add these to all of it. Boom. Because I'd like to know when I've covered all of these things. I'm trying to decide what is the easiest way to abuse async and await. And I'm thinking maybe a logging call. That might be the simplest way, because that also would dovetail nicely into these caller attribute ones. Intern string manipulation. I doubled up in a few places. Let's see. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. And we can kind of start to leverage this a little bit. Yeah, I know what we're going to do here. Okay, so let's go and add, because right now if I show this CS_proj file, this allow unsafe blocks is going to raise some eyebrows. So what we would like to do is not include this at all. That would be ideal, because that would be nice. But if you turn off the unsafe code blocks, you can't write unsafe code. Not surprising. But what you can do, and I don't intend to show this inside of Visual Studio when I do this, so I don't mind adding it to the solution file. Directory.build.props. So there are a couple magical files that automatically get picked up if they are in your folder hierarchy. Now, it does not stop at the root of your repo. So it'll walk all the way up to the root of your drive, which means you could put one at like C:, and watch people be very, very unhappy with you. Or, for example, in our case, what we could do is we could go add new item and XML file. So directory.build.props. And there's two files here, and I'm going to see if I can get this right. There are the difference between them. So it's directory.build.props and directory.build.targets. And the difference is with MS Build, it's a two-step process. The first step, where it effectively builds up all of its stuff, figures out, what targets do I have, what properties do I have, and then the second one, where it actually resolves and executes what it's found. So directory build props gets picked up in step 1, directory build targets gets picked up when it's going to actually do the execution and figure that out. And picked up is probably the wrong word. Evaluated. They're all picked up together. But the props get evaluated early, the targets get evaluated late. I think that's correct. When in doubt, I guarantee it's buried in the docs. Okay. So what we're going to do, though, is now take the unsafe code blocks out of our CS proj, put it in a directory build props, and we should still compile and run because, huzzah, still compiles and runs. So, oh, we're now back to Bob, though. Huh? Huh? Oh. I bet you I know exactly what it is. Oh, what a subtle, dirty... Yeah, so you'll note this shows Bob. But I'm willing to bet if I put a breakpoint here, so let's put it right after this. How about if I put a breakpoint here? Watch this. I bet you if I do this, Bob, continue, Joe. Did you catch it? Versus if I don't put this breakpoint here, and we investigate, it's Bob. That is awesome. Okay, so this is fun. By me looking at the variable, I am changing the behavior. That is hilarious. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna force evaluation. New var toString. We are just var ensure string used in var toString. Woo boy, that's when you know you can't type. stri is initialized. Okay, I bet you this now works. Kick it up. And if I actually, you know what? Let's just run it. Just run it top to bottom, because ultimately at the end of the day, there we are. We're back to Joe. That's fun. Sometimes using your debugger and looking at things can change the behavior. Yeah, try to track those bugs down. The ones that only reproduce when you don't look at them. I've got one such bug, and if we get all of this stuff done, I may look at it later tonight. Actually, looking at the time, probably not. It's probably late. It's a weird memory leak, and it has this behavior of when I look at it, it doesn't fail. But when I do look at it, it works. Which is really, really annoying. Okay. So, directory build props. Okay, so we're going to add this in. So, let's see, what do we do? Adding in directory build dot props file, fixing issue with the module initializer. Okay, so that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay, so we need to add in a few more things. Let's go back to my... let's see, so update. So we've done this. We leveraged that pretty good. We didn't do that perfectly. We did do that. Deconstruction with an extension method. We did that. May not include that one. We did do module initializers. We did do build props. This one I think might be really fun to do. This one might be really, really, really fun to do. So here's the premise here. I actually have an idea for a legitimate use for this. So in system command line, boom, I have a pull request that's sitting out here that there's some fun build issues with. But what it does is it leverages source generators to sort of abuse this, and it does it with extension methods. But let me don't want to look at that. Where are the tests? Don't want to look at that. Test. So what it does is it uses a source generator to generate up this handler method. And how this handler method is initially defined is where is, let's see, command handler generator factory. Where are the extension methods? Generator extensions. So these methods here exist, and you'll note the implementation here just throws an invalid op, because you should never ever get here. Because what the source generator will do is anytime it sees an invocation of one of these methods, it will go through and write an extension method in your project that is a closer and better match than this one, effectively blocking all invocations to these methods. Which is great in this use case because it lets you do some fun things with source generators, and it allows this source generator to run not necessarily on every keystroke but on compile, because it doesn't need to watch for when you actually type .generate. It can just pay attention to, hey, in fact there is an invocation to this other one. Great, awesome, that's what we're looking for, which is nice. But it's also ripe for abuse. And I think what we could do is write a source generator. I'm thinking we could write a source generator that hijacks console readline. Because we've already completely abused every other method in here. No, better idea. We abuse datetime try parse. I'm just trying to decide if we abuse datetime try parse, because technically this one kind of has an injection point a little bit, because this thing calls in and leverages the current culture. So we could do some other fun stuff with it. And actually, let's move this into, well, we'll wait till we get to it. I was going to move that into its own method. You know what might actually be better? Oh, this would be mean. Because I'm intentionally trying to think downstream. Ultimately, the look and feeling of what I want to do is I want to open this in VS Code and show this. Yes, I trust the authors. Basically, this is what I want to show, and I'm realizing if I show this, it shows all of these files. Let's move the files out. So let's go here and put bad stuff. And I'm gonna close Visual Studio real quick because we're gonna just get really abusive. Yes, I trust the authors. Okay, so what I would like to do is take all of the files that I don't want to expose, and I'm going to move them into bad stuff. Now, that has implicitly broken the compile. Well, actually, probably not. The code, I'm pretty sure, works without all those things in the way, except for this extension method. That one's required. However, what I am thinking is if we leverage this, and here, I'll actually just show this in Visual Studio, and we'll see what this does. We could leverage these automatic files to bring in extra stuff. So, quick history lesson. In ye olden days, the CS proj was big and ugly. It was still XML like what we have now, but there was a lot of it. And moving files around was a big pain, and nobody liked to edit them, and yada, yada, yada. enter .NET Core. I think it was around the introduction of .NET Core. Microsoft decided, okay, we're going to clean up the project file. We want this to be something that's a lot friendlier, easier to work with. Most people are taking defaults out of the box. Let's have some good, solid defaults that we can work with. We don't need people writing a bunch of stuff. And so what they did is, for a library project, you don't even need the output type. You just omit that. You need to specify target framework, and that's about it. In fact, I think that is it. I think for bare minimum. But they brought the project file down really itty bitty. You didn't lose features. You could always, if you upgraded your project from an old CS proj to a new CS proj, there were converter tool that would do it, and it would leave a lot of extra junk lying around because there was some stuff where it would have to guess, and so rather than guess, it just kind of left some of the junk in there. But you could start to go through and figure it out. One of the things that it does, though, is it automatically includes C# files that are inside the project directory, which is a very reasonable default. If I add a .cs file somewhere inside of my project directory, I probably want it included in my project. But it's important to remember that just because this CS proj, which is coming from this particular SDK that gives you that behavior, just because that's the default doesn't mean you have to keep that. You can change it if you want. That's what we're going to do. So for example, if I wanted to do this manually, I'd go add existing item, and I'd come up a directory, I'd come over to bad stuff, and I'd go, I really want my var CS. And that made a copy of it. That is not what we want. Let's try that again. Add existing item, var.cs, and this little drop down here on the add button, you can click it and hit add as link. And so what this does is it says, okay, in addition to the set of things that I'm going to compile, which again, part of that default compile set is all CS files, let's just bring this thing across. And I'm thinking what we do is we say, no, here's what we're going to do. We are going to bring across all CS files, and we are going to do some fancy, come on, probably getting confused. Target file name, I think, is the magical incantation. If I'm not mistaken. You can see the thing is showing a red X. And let's see. MS build. Trying to remember the exact invocation. It's gonna be. I shouldn't say it's going to be. I'm pretty confident it's going to be %paren, and it could just be file name. So it's going to be this. Let's see. %paren metadata. That's close. That's not quite what I wanted. And it might just be file name. And Visual Studio is probably very unhappy with me. Yeah, I understand. I did something bad and you're now angry. This is definitely not a use case that is normal. I think it's that, because when you do a globbing pattern like this, you need something that effectively lets you iterate. And it might be compile arrow file name. I cannot remember the syntax. This isn't quite what I'm looking for, I don't think. Target batching. A target element may have output attributes with specified metadata in the form. I agree with that, but I don't know how to get the target output value from the compile bit. Items, MS build items, compile. This is the set, but I want to know what are the outputs from you. Using wildcards to specify items. Oh, I wonder if I'm just making this way too hard, and the solution is this. I might just be making the thing a little too hard. Let's relaunch and see if that does it. It might be item metadata. See, this is what I want. And maybe I need to do compile.filename. See, removing metadata, keep duplicates. I just don't know how to get the... I just made it too hard. Okay, so now what we do is we take this lovely thing that has conveniently brought us here. We come over to our directory build props and we go, booyah. Hey Kevin, I do have a few material design questions. Oh, yes, UXWPF. I did. So I did see that, and I pulled open your GitHub profile, and I was I didn't see an easy way to get access to it. Let me get you that information. So, if you have access to Twitter, that might be the easiest option. You can just DM me directly there, and we can set something up. If you've got material design questions that you want to drop in the chat here, I'm happy to try and answer some of those as well, if that helps you out at all. If that doesn't work, let me think. Give me 1 second. I gotta get my... Do not have Twitter. 1 second. Let me message you privately here, and I will... And... So... I sent you a whisper over Twitch with my direct email address, so you can reach me there. And yes, we can certainly Zoom at some point as well. I am happy to do that. Zoom, Teams, Skype. Trying to think. Most messaging thingies I do or can do. So if that helps for you. What time zone are you in, if you don't mind me asking? Oh, Pacific time. Perfect. Yeah. Shoot me an email. Let me know what works for you, and we can set something up, and we'll go from there. And thank you for the sponsorship. I do certainly appreciate it. It was a welcome surprise tonight. Not a problem. And thank you for reaching out. I will go through and... I'm trying to think of a good way for people to reach out to me on GitHub. It's just because there's no direct messenger, it's not always easy, but I try to make sure that all of my social links are easy for people to find. Okay. We'll leave that over there. And okay, back to what we were doing. So complete abuse of all the things. So my intent is... My intent is, when I actually go to share this and do the talk, my intent is to actually just start here and have this be what we show. So a simple CS program, a simple CS proj, terminal, .NET, run, right? Very simple. And I might need to clean up some of the warnings. Please enter your name. Weird stuff, weird stuff. Boom! That's the behavior we want. I get so much joy out of this. This is not something you should do in any of your code bases ever. Yeah, that would be bad. Don't do any of that. Yeah, but this just makes me so very, very happy that this works. Moving out all of the bad files. Commit that, push that. That is awesome. Absolutely awesome. Okay, I'm really happy with that. I'm very, very happy with that. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, sorry. I'm way too happy about that. I have lost my window and I have that one. Okay, so okay, so let's go with intern string manipulation. I think we could actually get away with intern string manipulation and get a waiter all if we go through and get rid of some and do some fun like logging stuff or similar. Yeah, I think we could do this. I'm trying to decide what is the absolutely, because in order to abuse the get a waiter call, I'm going to need an async method. And I'm trying to think of what is the absolutely simplest. What's the absolute simplest method I can write that uses async and await? Or more accurately, what underlying method? I guess, do I really need... I mean, I do need a framework call somewhere. At the end of the day, I either need to get myself down to building a task or doing... I either need to build up my own task with like a task run or task factory start new or something. Or I need to call some framework method that's asynchronous, because I'm not pulling in a third-party library for this. The whole point is simple. So what would be the absolutely simplest asynchronous method? The only thing coming to mind is like the file IO stuff. Then you got to do file IO. Oh, memory stream copy. Maybe streams. You still have the issue of you got to back it with something. Memory stream could be fine. Is that too complex? I want this to be easy. Easy. What is the simplest C# async methods? Task.run might be it. What do they use in the docs? The docs do a good job of trying to find simple stuff. They go HTTP client. The only problem I have with doing something like this with an HTTP client, admittedly, it is a very simple call. It's easy to understand, get string async, feed it a URL. The only weird part is I'm intentionally building up a program that's designed to feel broken and feel a little magic-y in that it's doing things. An HTTP client has several injection points built into it. Specifically, the constructor on HTTP client takes in a handler. And so one of the simplest things to do when you're working with HTTP client is inject your own handler. And so you can do pretty much anything you want at that point. The handler is responsible for actually doing the call. So you could have a handler that says, yeah, nope, and throws everything away. I wrote one for testing at one point in time where the handler's purpose in life was to hijack calls to my API so that while I was running unit tests, my code could still use HTTP client, but the HTTP client that the rest of my code was getting was one that had a handler that was basically set up for, hey, if you see this API call, here's the pre-canned response. Otherwise, fail the request. It's very simple, but it meant that my code I could run and I didn't have to worry about network calls or anything messing stuff up. It was pretty easy. It's kind of nice. So, yeah, and the other one that they went with here was task.run. Maybe task run is one of the simplest methods. CPU bound and IO bound work. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if that matters to me here. Maybe task.run is the simplest. Task.run might be the simplest of all .NET async methods. What horrid things are you doing? Hey, Robert. Oh, and what is it? Dusto the Dolphin. Welcome. Thank you for the subscribe. Robert, you will be happy to know. Do we need a proper async method with async in the signature or generate what you need? So I will share. So I am intentionally trying to do what is arguably the worst possible thing you can potentially do. Yeah, it's bad. So 1 second, let me grab you. If you want to see how far we've gotten, here's the repo. So before you throw up and start throwing things at me, let me explain. Because I haven't obviously gotten to like a README or anything yet. And always looking for content, and glad I stayed up late. Well, if you do need to go to bed, don't let me keep you up. You can catch the recordings on my YouTube channel as well. So they get posted 3 days, 4 days after the stream ends. Call thread abort, then a do. Oh, actually, Robert, that's it. Okay, you joke, but that's actually perfect for this. So my goal is I want to do a talk for a user group or similar at some point. Very similar to ones that I've seen like John Skeet and a few others do. Basically showing off all of the, we'll call it magic in C# or horrendous things that you can possibly get away with. Because there's a lot of functionality in C# that you never get to use in a normal program, either because it's an absolutely horrid idea and you should never ever do it. But some of those features do have very, very small legitimate use cases. Very small. Some of them very, very small. So I started making a list, and that's the gist that you can see there, of kind of a bunch of stuff of if I was to go about building out a talk like that, of what are the magical bad things that you should never, ever, ever do. Here are the things that I would want to include in that talk. And I don't know how many of these are reasonably able to do it. Async to sync and async chain. Yeah, but those require timing and threading. And my goal is to have this. So when I do this talk, my goal is to set it up. Oh, thank you, Do-So01. Appreciate the subscription. My goal when I set this up is to be able to have ideally an application that sits on one screen that somebody could reason through. Off the top of my head, enum with non-int backing type. That could be interesting. The fact that enums always have a 0th member is usually the one that surprises people. So, like, for example, we've got this. So you can see on the left, I've got a CS proj. It's pretty much empty in default. I've got a program CS. It's nothing fancy. Oh, and I love the way VS Code's coloring works, because this is going to work to my advantage. So this is a very simple program. It asks you for a name. It asks you for a birthday. Parses it into a date time. If it can parse, it does some output here. And if it fails, it does an error message. Now, secretly, this case isn't possible. Allow me to explain. So if I do, let's just clear this out. If I do .NET run, arguably a very simple thing to do, I enter my name, which my name is clearly Kevin. I enter my birthday, which is not actually the 2nd of April in 2021. I was not born this year, in case that's not obvious. clearly my name now output is Joe. I am 35 years, 2 months, and 42 days old. And that's the awesomeness. I feel so horrible with what I have done, and yet I'm so very happy about it. It's horrible. Do not. Okay, so if we look at it in Visual Studio, you start. I'll just show you the horrible mess that we've gotten ourselves into. So the fun starts before we even get into main, because I've got a module initializer sitting in here. It does some unsafe code, and unsafe code is enabled because I've got a directory build prop sitting a directory higher than what I showed you in VS Code. It goes through, it hijacks a constant string to rewrite the word Bob to Joe. Oh no, Robert, this has not gotten bad yet. It gets worse. It gets much worse. We get down into here, and unfortunately Visual Studio is helpfully pointing out, you'll note this var is not blue like the other keywords. Well, naturally what I did, if you create your own class named var, and in this case I put it in the global namespace, because why not? Let's have some fun. I don't even need this original string, and I might just whack this just because I don't actually need it yet. So you'll note it implicitly converts from a string to this var type, so it doesn't matter what you type here. I'm just going to get a new var instance, which is one of these things, which is great. And you'll note its toString method is Bob. But you'll note, we don't output Bob, we output Joe. And we output Joe because the module initializer with unsafe rewrites the intern string of Bob to Joe, which was exciting. It gets worse, and we just had all kinds of fun. So you'll note, we go down a couple lines, and you'll note, in this case, I used capital S for string. This is why you should always favor keywords instead of type names. This is one of the things I usually harp on my colleagues for whenever I'm doing code reviews is, oh, hey, you know, don't use the type name, use the keyword. And usually the question comes back, what's the difference? They're the same. They're the same unless somebody does something horrendously bad and defines their own string class. Because why not? Why not, right? So in this case, basically the same concept. Except for, and I'm just going to throw that away just to make the warnings go away. Except for in this case, we also convert back to a string. So here, you'll note we do a read line. Again, doesn't matter what you type. You're going to get one of my strings, not your strings. But this thing here has to be able to feed in to a datetime try-parse, which the datetime try-parse needs either a read-only span or a string or similar. And I elected to just go with string. I thought about going with the read-only span, but it's like, whatever. And then it outputs this. So it doesn't matter what you type. You're always going to get 420-1987, which is perfect. You get down here where you calculate the age with by just subtracting these things, right? That's normal. This line of code is actually sane, right? There might be an argument for UTC or whatever, but this line of code is currently sane. I haven't done anything bad to it yet. Patience. But then you'll note there's this fun little bit down here, and this is actually kind of a legit usage, though somewhat unexpected, is you can deconstruct a type using extension methods. So for example, timespan doesn't have a deconstruct method declared on it, but you can declare your own, right? And you'll note, once again, I just made up values because why not? And then here we write these things out. And that's where we've gotten to so far. And I think we can do even more fun. And I was trying to decide which one of these abusive options I should implement next. And I was thinking that if I implemented some sort of logging, I could, specifically something with an async syntax, I could abuse the duck typing on getAwaiter, which would give me another injection point. I could abuse the formattable strings, which would give me yet one more injection point. I could abuse caller member name attribute, which is typically used in logging scenarios, so it wouldn't look that out of place, and then abuse it, because why not? I still don't know if I can play with name of and dynamic variables. So, for reference, a lot of these ones that you see here, I haven't linked them up appropriately yet, but let me throw some of those ones in that I was talking about. So, not all of these did I come up with. Some of these, John Skeet's done a bunch of these talks, so pretty much his entire abusing C# folder I found to be just absolutely amazing. There is so much in here that you can do bad things with. Some of it is very specific to, like, there are certain things that are tightly coupled to, like, either a particular version of C# or a particular version of .NET where there was weird idiosyncrasies. It's fine, whatever. Some of them I'm like, that's not as much fun to show, or that one's, like, useful. Get rid of it. So, again, I was trying to just boil this down into something that I could do in a 60-minute presentation, with the idea being show off what looks to be a simple program, show off it completely misbehaving and working by magic, and then walk through basically deconstructing the magic, because sometimes just understanding how the magic trick works gives you the tools to be able to do useful things that aren't anything close to this monstrosity that I've built. But I'm trying to combine as much monstrosity into as few lines of code as I can. And I'm thinking I just get rid of this else, because it's not providing value and it's not actually possible to get there. So I think we're going to get rid of it. But I do love how VS Code highlights this var with blue. It makes me so happy. This is a great way to tell if your syntax highlighter is working with a well-known set, or if it's actually using, like, Roslyn to look up what the symbols mean. So that's the idea. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to build out a little logger thingy-mabobber. I think that's where we're going. Okay, let me commit what I've got so far. Just drop that. Let's see. Clean up some warnings and remove unreachable code. No one I work with needs this dangerous knowledge. Does the idea of a method with 4.results bother you? That's my life. Oh. So yes. So .result, or any of those various methods that cause a task to complete synchronously, always my spidey sense starts tingling and I get very weirded out. For people unfamiliar with it, .result is almost always bad because it can cause deadlock situations. There is a great article on it. C# sync over async. Where is it? There is a yes. These things here. There's two blogs from Steven here. Until the next product. Oh, I am sorry. I understand how that goes. There are times where old code has a certain amount of inertia, and it is hard to do it. There is a sister article to this, which is the inverse of doing sync over async. And I wish there was an easy... I wonder if I just click on... Can I not just click on Steven's name? I want to... There is a sister article to this, but this breaks it down really well. So if you... There are times where you find yourself in this situation where you legitimately have these types of problems. Like maybe you're using a third-party library that you don't have a choice in, and it's just sucky, or maybe was written before TPL was invented and it's just been brought forward or something. There's not a great answer of of how to do this, but Steven does a great job in this of breaking down what you could do, what you should do, and all of the considerations to go with it. Unfortunately, a lot of times I run into this inside of ASP.NET Core, and if you're on one of the newer versions, like I think 3.1 or 3.0, one of the so the deadlock situation all comes about because of the scheduler that exists. The problem being is that in the newest versions, there is no great way to the newer versions. They got rid of the scheduler that could potentially cause the deadlock, because inside of a web API or similar, you can kind of have all threads be treated equal. But say you're building like a desktop application where there's a UI thread. All threads are not equal. The UI thread definitely has a purpose. And so that is the fundamental thing. Yes, definitely worth reading. These are hands down some of my favorite blogs. On my other machine, I've got a link of a bunch of these types of blogs that are just good reading to go through to make sure everybody's aware of. Because it's one of those things I see people, oh, I'm calling this async method. I don't know what to do. I need, I don't know how to make this whole chain async. Because async and await is kind of it permeates the whole stack. Once you make a method async in one spot, up and down, it goes crazy. And so a lot of times people don't want to make that change because it can spider out to your whole code base rather quickly. And understandably, maybe it's not a good time to make that change, yada yada, but you're making an async call, you need to complete synchronously. How do you do it? Ugh. Anyway. Okay, so with all that said, let's write us a little logger. How simple can I make this logger? So we're going to do this. Class logger. And maybe what we do, precompiler directives, pound define. Yes. Yes. There's a couple of them that get really fun that I was going to leverage with this. So, Robert, I know you're already familiar with it, but like public void foo. So, for example, one of the things that I want, caller member name. So for people who aren't familiar with this, there is a set of attributes that exist. String caller name. And the cool part is when you call this foo method, what will happen is the compiler will look at the caller and it will go through and put the caller name in here for you. Most of the time. There is an exception case, which is great, which is the one I want to abuse. But these attributes are really useful in things like either MVVM pattern, because getting like your property name is very useful, or loggers that want to like indicate, hey, who called this log method. The two other ones are file and line number related, and there is a preprocessor directive called line. You can see where I'm going with this. If you can grab the caller's line number, but this thing can override the line number, let the fun begin. We can do some really cool stuff we're going to be on line 30,000 in a file that has 6. Typically, those directives are largely in there for generated code, because oftentimes, generated code needs to fix some stuff up or whatnot. Yeah, sure, fine, I get it. It's just those are the legitimate use cases, and I'm looking for as many illegitimate use cases as I can come up with. But I think what we're going to do is just write line. I think we're going to go async task. Let's do that for now. We may need to hijack this task class, because I might legitimately get down to the point where I hijack every built-in framework call to where there's not a framework call left in this code. Which sounds pretty fun. Not gonna lie, sounds pretty fun. Okay, so this is the one we want to do here. And I think what we're going to do is just return await task.run. And I think we'll just do this. That, I think, is the easiest way to get me to that. I think that's the easiest way to do it. Change all bool results. True, false, false, false. Robert, remember, the goal is for it to look reasonable. Some things change the look of the code to where people look at your C# and go, wait, what? Like, I could pull out, like, the arrows, like the unsafe, legitimate, dereference, C-looking arrow pointers. The problem is, the moment I do that, people are going to really start questioning my sanity. Though we may be beyond that point already. It's very plausible. Very plausible. Okay, so if we do this, maybe just inside of here we do a console write line. And we do... So there's technically one more injection point inside of here. Because I'm doing this with the $sign, we can... there's some opportunities for when the string gets formatted to hijack it with the current culture. And I'm thinking what I might do is play around with a fun culture and set it inside of my module initializer. That could be fun. That could be very fun. For reference points, where is this one here? It would be very similar to this concept. So Johnsky did it in the terms of SQL. I would do it in terms of logger. And more importantly, I've got a fun way of injecting it. So. Conditional debug. Oh, that's an interesting idea. See, the thing though is it doesn't have to be debug. I like the idea of the conditional attribute, Robert. That's going on my list. You are let's see. Conditional attribute. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to get everything on my list into here. And more importantly, if I get everything on my list into here, I don't know if I can reasonably do a talk explaining all of it in about an hour. Because most user groups, you've only got maybe 60-ish minutes. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, depends on the user group. And more importantly, people start losing their attention after about 60 minutes anyway, so you got to keep it short and sweet. So I might have to do like a V2 of this if people like it. But yes, this is definitely the how bad can we go. So let's go here. Let's go caller name. The depth in some of these things can get pretty brutal. Yes. I did. So there's one thing that I want to include in here, and I don't know if I should. So IL weaving. So I did a user group talk one time on mono Cecil and Foddy and IL weaving. I think I lost the audience pretty quick. It was not. It didn't go well. I can admit it. Not everything that I have done has gone well, and public speaking is one of those that I'm not great at it. But yeah, dependency injection, IO weaving, post shark. Yeah, see, and I've got ways of getting those tools loaded in and running on this project. The problem is the moment I start doing IL weaving, if I show that during the talk, pretty much it doesn't matter what the rest of the code is because I could have IL weaved everything out. And so it's like, well, that's kind of a cheater one-shot. But it also would allow for some really cool stuff. Because I'm sort of hoping that this can be like the onion, where you peel back the layers and there's just tiers at each layer as you go. That's the goal. Yeah, I would avoid IL weaving for now. Yeah, like I said, I've been just kind of throwing things into this list as they have come to me or as I've run across them, and had fun with them. Like this positive negative 0 one. This is one that is... It is worth knowing that positive and negative 0 do exist in C#. It's just that most of the time people don't realize it. Oh, Senko99, thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. Yeah, due to your classic overflows. Completely agree, Robert. But the positive negative 0 one can bite you, specifically in cases that involve like serialization. Anything that where you start getting like the byte representation of your numbers, or you like start converting to binary or whatnot, or hex. Positive and negative 0 do look different when you get down to the binary level, and so they can be different. And so you can run into some weird cases where you can have like, foo equals 0, foo gets 0. And it's like, wait, that code looks weird. It's like, well, what it's guaranteeing is that if I have anything that resolves to a value of 0, I assign it to positive 0, not negative 0. Because those are different. So I don't know if I would necessarily abuse that one too much yet. So there's a few of these. And like the partial classes is... so the positive negative 0 thing is more... It's more a runtime thing. So for people unfamiliar with it, C# compiles down to what's called IL, or intermediate language. Depending on what year it is and what source you're reading, sometimes that intermediate language is called Microsoft IL or MSIL. The new stuff is typically what's called CIL, or Common Intermediate Language. And what typically happens is when you fire up your application, the runtime reads that IL. It looks very similar to assembly level architecture stuff. And then it gets interpreted, but the runtime can do some fun stuff with like inlining and caching and all that stuff for great performance. I kind of am being a little hesitant and vague there, also because I know that there are like native compilers with like NGen that you can do with C#2 now, so there's options. But the positive negative 0 kind of comes down to the language spec runtime of how that's implemented. So yeah, the language didn't invent that format, it's 2's complement. So yes, you are absolutely correct. And a lot of it comes from the history of C# and the invention of it from C-based languages. They stuck with things that people were already familiar with, and changing kind of like, if you were to say, I'm going to represent an integer in my new programming language, and the binary representation isn't going to be like the 2's complement, you are probably going to confuse a lot of people, because there's a lot of stuff built around kind of that knowledge and mentality of this is how things work. So totally didn't know about that first point. Made me laugh. Awesome. Okay, so logger. I am very distracted. Okay, so we're gonna do something like this. We're gonna do. Should we do string, or should we just go like formattable string? Because we could do this. We could totally do this. Because there's no way this is gonna bite me at all. Okay, so fun thing in C#. When you do, and actually here, let's do this. Static, because I don't care. You'll note I'm even going to the effort of leaving off protection modifiers in most of these because they don't matter. And I'm trying to keep this as short and sweet as possible. Though there's a reason you should always specify them, because if you don't, you get confused. Or I get confused. You people are smarter than me. I'm sure it's not a problem for you. So, but for example, so logger, right line. So when you do $, quote, that's not always guaranteed to be a string. Most of the time it is, because that's how the APIs work. But when you do $, quote, the compiler now gets a choice. Depending on the usage of that, in this case it's being passed into something that takes a formattable string, which is the other target type that you can go into. Now, formattable string is an abstract base, and the actual implementing class is something that is private to the compiler that you aren't supposed to get access to. Sorry. It's just implementation of how we interpret the binary. I mean, look at NDNS. Oh, make me shudder, Robert. But the compiler can take this and go through and convert it into either a formattable string, technically a derived class formattable string, or a regular string. Hey, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. So in either case, you can get there. But formattable string is basically a representation of a string format. So if I do something like, I don't know, arg sub 0, which is clearly going to throw and maybe some subtext. So if we look at the formattable string itself and what's on it, you'll note you then get things like the format string, which this will end up being something along, in my example here, will end up being, %0 foo, because that is, if you were to use the string format call, the format that's there. It could also be, if we look at this, you can get like an argument count of how many arguments there are, in this case 1, and then you can actually go down and get the arguments based on their index. So you can either get them all, get one based on index, etc., and you can do some fun stuff. This allows you to take that formattable string, and rather than just say feeding it into a string format call, you can do whatever you want with it, which is a perfect time for what we're going to do here. Do something completely unexpected. For example, we can take in the format and say, and go somewhere else with it. And let's make this clear that we're going to put async on the end of it, because if I just do write line in this, it will not be clear that this is my async call. So let's go with async task. Okay. And I'm a little worried that if I hijack the task type, I might break something in the async main stuff. We'll see how that goes. But I'm thinking of what we're going to do is, I think, let's replace all of our console write lines instead with logger calls. And so you'll note, one thing that's important to note, strings do not convert to formattable strings. That's not a thing. So in this case, the $sign is absolutely required, even though I don't have any curly braces inside of it. And we're gonna just continue the pattern here and here. And we got a $sign that guy up, and we're gonna go here. So I think what we're gonna do, yeah, and there's some cool stuff that you can do with this. Again, the implement places where it's cool to implement let you do some fun stuff. So I'm gonna go back once again, system command line, because I absolutely love that library. There is a cool thing that we did in the system command line library that abuses formattable string. So let me samples, rendering playground, process tree. Does this one have it? I don't think it does. I think the clock example does, though. It's the clock. Colorizer, colors view. Where's clock? Is it just inlined in here? Sample, colors, directory, Mobi, process, table view, clock. This one. So there is a very cool thing that we did here with the formattable string. So we look at the parameter, and if it is an iObservable, we will go through and automatically do the updates for you. So it'll do the iObservable subscribe call, and it will go through, and in this case, as the clock ticks, it will automatically render. So you'll note that this while loop here basically just sits and spins for a little bit, and it just pumps values into that iObservable. But because this view came from the iObservable with a formattable string, it's able to reach into that string, pull out its format, look at the argument, and say, oop, nope, argument changed, update, 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 and handle that for you. So there are some really cool legitimate use cases. you need to be a little careful because very few people know about this and expect it. It's one of those, people see formattable string in the API and they go, wait, what? That's weird, because it is not intuitive that if I throw this $sign on here, magic occurs. Imagine if a formatter args could be expression, you could do some crazy stuff. Amen. Yes, 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 yes. Absolute yes. You could go total crazy on this. Okay, so I think I want to do a couple things here. So I want to be, just for the purposes of, I think I want to let the first two go through and absolutely abuse the last one. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go if string argument count equals 0, we'll do this. So this will come in here. And I think what we're going to do is just, actually it shouldn't matter. If argument count is 0, we can just toString it. That'll work. Pretty sure it works. Let's just test that real quick. I'm pretty sure the toString on formattable string will just dump it out as though it were a string format. I could be wrong. This is something else that we'll probably get to abusing here in a moment, is putting a value in here, though typically we'll call your toString method, not guaranteed. So let's see, main, this grab the caller member name. So we should probably take that off of there. Please enter your birthday. And then okay, perfect. So it did behave the way I wanted. So in this case, what we're going to do is we are going to just do this. Okay. Now, down here is where, so else case, let's see, console write line, we'll go there, in, trying to decide, and maybe I just drop the caller attributes, maybe they aren't worth abusing, because they more or less, so here's the failure case. They more or less work the way you would expect. They put in the caller name. However, if you invoke them, and I believe it's from let's see, placed on constructor arguments and the constructor is not explicitly specified. So for example, if you were to do something like this, let's just show off the failure case. Public class foo, public class bar, right? And we will have foo derived from bar, because that's the thing we do. We put a constructor here, right? So you'll know I've got a constructor on bar, but because it doesn't take any parameters, foo doesn't need to explicitly declare any parameters. But now imagine what happens if I do something crazy like this. What value shows up here if foo doesn't declare any constructor args? So for example, if we come down here and I just go bar f gets new foo, right? So we'll just show this off. Compiling. Oh, I can't do that because var's overridden. Good reason not to do that. Yeah, so we'll just catch it there. So we come into here and whoop, call our member name, null. So this mostly works when you know the caller. But in this case, the caller is the implicitly declared default constructor on foo. So there is no caller to put in. So relying on this to always be here, it's mostly good. Probably. So for reference, this bit me in a production app at one point, and I went, wait, what? Because I didn't realize that this was a possibility. And obviously, I don't remember whether it was me or somebody else had added a new class, and we started getting very weird logging output. It's like, oops. Because this was like log message class or something to that effect. So, but it may not be worth. Is there another place other than constructors where it could bite you? I'm trying to think. I don't. Let's see. The other places I could see it biting you, because the implicit constructor is the only one that I know that would be automatically generated. You might get unusual results in the cases of potentially static constructors, destructors, and operators would be the cases where I could see it being weird. You would probably not get null, though, in all of those cases. You would get the weird string representation of those methods, because those ones have weird looking ones. Because typically what you will see in this caller member name is whatever you would normally see inside of an exception stack trace. Now, normally what would happen is if you were to grab the stack trace in that null situation, you just wouldn't see the call stack frame of the foo constructor because it's not there. Pretty sure that's true. Let me test that real quick. I don't actually know. So yes, you can also do like just new call stack, but I'm gonna try this first. I'm pretty sure you don't see the foo constructor in the call stack here. Oh, it didn't actually. Oh, fine. Throw. Because throwing exceptions is expensive, but it should break for me. View details. I just want to see what the stack trace looks like here. So you do get it there in the call stack, so what I told you was wrong. I do suspect that the caller one would still have problems in the destructor, operators, and static constructor as well, because those are the other ones that have very weird names inside of the generated IL. And it is worth noting, this caller member name is resolved at compile time. So it is when the compiler sees an invocation of this method, it has to decide at compile time what string to pass. So what's happening is at compile time, it's generating up something that looks similar to this. Now, obviously, if it had a value to put in here, it could generate something similar to that as well. That is a thing that it could do. And this is kind of an edge case thingy-mabobber. Typically, what people would, rather than relying on the magic, you would do something like this. And then just expect people to do something like name of. And you can get away with something like that. Something like that. Okay, back to the monstrosity. Okay, so we've got this guy here. What happens if you do public foo base empty string? Do you get foo in the caller name? Good question. I'm fairly confident that the answer is no, but so let's go boom, boom, boom. I'm fairly confident that you do not get, just grab it there. Because it's declared, you now get the .ctor in there. And that's probably, that kind of makes sense. And it also sort of makes sense why the exception would have it in the call stack, because the exception's call stack is being resolved at runtime, not compile time. At compile time, this attribute has to be resolved by Roslyn. So all it has to work with is the what's called the AST or syntax tree. So if you follow any of my other videos with like where I've done source generator work, you end up working a lot with the Roslyn APIs. You'll end up getting to see the representation of your code from that perspective, which is a lot of symbols. And so symbols is the resolved one. Expression is the other one, where it's just effectively the textual representation, where a symbol is where it's actually done the lineup. There is a great YouTube series that Emo did. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Let's see. Emo. Oh boy. Worth YouTube compiler. This one. I believe this is it. I believe this is it. He has a... Tell me you put them all in a playlist. Building a compiler. This is the one you want. Yes. So this playlist here, he walks through building a compiler from scratch, but a lot of what's being built up shows off the behavior in Roslyn and why compilers behave the way that they do. If you've got time to watch all of these are well worth it, especially if you want to kind of understand that low-level functional of how like compilers work. Obviously, the compiler that he builds out here is not nearly as powerful as Roslyn. It gets you down to understanding the basics of compilers. But well worth the watch. Well worth the watch. Emo is very, very smart. So definitely recommend that if the compiler stuff is at all interesting to you, or you just want to get a better handle on why it behaves the way that it does. Okay. I keep saying back to the monstrosity. I keep getting distracted. But distractions are good. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, so over here... thinking we might just drop the caller member name. This may not be worth including. Now the formattable string and the async stuff we're definitely going to include. We might ditch the task.run though too. Oh, we can get rid of task.run here. We don't need this. We don't need this. Okay, because that's what we actually wanted to override. Okay, so let's come back. For now, what we're going to do is we're just going to always output it, and good enough. That'll be fine. Okay, but what I want to do is I want to change this from a task returning class. Because you'll note, the usage of this is simply something calling await on it. And what can you await in C#? Most people would say the things that you can await in C# would be tasks. Some people might go as far as to say, well, task or value task. And some people might call out like one of the interfaces or whatnot. That's actually not true. There's a few areas in C# where they use a thing called duck typing. And duck typing, the principle goes, if it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So what that means in terms of code is this await keyword doesn't care if you're a task, doesn't care if you're in the BCL. What it cares about is that you have a getAwaiter method. So, class, how about my task? Let's go with that. Let's have some fun. And you are going to return my task. And I don't know. Return new my task. Good enough. I just need you to return something. And you'll note down here it's now unhappy. And you'll note the error that we get down here is my task does not contain a definition for getAwaiter. And it gets even better. You'll note that getAwaiter can be an extension method. So we could implement getAwaiter on my task, or we could go a little further and just put it somewhere else. Task extensions. all of these things are going to end up in their own C# file off in upper directory so that they don't show. But for now, I just write them in line. So if we do public static, what is it? I don't remember what the object type is. Get awaiter this. Await 42. Correct. You can do that. I don't recommend it, but you can get away with it. I'm glad that you immediately jumped to how awesome of an example can I take this newfound knowledge and abuse it with. That's the appropriate response. That's usually why my coworkers make fun of me, is because oftentimes I see new features and go, ooh, I bet you I can find a way to abuse that. And then they start going, oh dear heavens, what have you done? Or task. See, you'll note here, the return type of an async method must be void task, task of t, I async enumerable, or I async enumerable of t, or a task-like type. That little one in the middle there, task-like type, that's what we're going for. That's the one. Okay, so this guy here, object does not contain it. Yeah, see, and this is what I couldn't remember. What is the... there is get awaiter. What is... here, where's the get awaiter? I can't remember what it needs to look like. Get awaiter. Task awaiter. So it needs to look something like that. Okay. You sit on the side here and wait. Pun intended. My awaiter's gonna wait. I'm laughing on the inside. I'm sure everyone else is too. Okay, so we'll just nest this class. Public, and we could, sure. We'll do that. And so this guy here is going to be this. Let's see. Public bool is completed. We'll just get set on that guy because why not? The autocode is sometimes not the greatest. Public void get results. That does not seem right that would be a void method, but oh no, it does. On completed. Actually, maybe I'll wait and see exactly which of these things it complains about. Return new my awaiter, and sure, we just throw everything away. We don't care. We're going for abusive here. Let's see. Wait, what happens if you give func t of task a get awaiter extension method? What is awaited? Ah, good question. So the idea being, how do you resolve the get awaiter extension method? So when they added extension methods to C#, there was one critical rule that they put in place, which is instance methods or methods directly on the type always win over extension methods. So when it's the compiler's doing the method resolution to try to figure out what to invoke, it will the instance and static methods on the type will win out over extension methods. So extension methods are sort of at the last or close to last in the list of possibilities of resolving which method gets hit. So you are not able to use an extension method to slap a get awaiter on, say, system threading task, because that guy already has an instance member, func of tu, where u is task like. Wow, hang on, you're gonna make my head hurt. That could probably work. The only thing that gets weird is you would probably have to define an interface and do a generic type constraint on u to the interface so that you could await on it. Because if U was unconstrained, the compiler would probably give you a similar error saying that there was no get a waiter or task-like stuff on it. So if you went that route, I think you have to put a generic constraint on U. Wow, this is bad. I've gone 2 hours and I haven't even finished my first Mountain Dew. Something is wrong. Oh, sorry, I meant func of task, my task like. You should be able to. Because you would have to invoke the func to get the my task like back, but then you could await on that. Unless you're wanting to put a get a waiter on the func, which would probably cause some very interesting syntax. Because then you could actually await. Yeah, if you did a get await, if you created an awaiter on a func of t of my task like, you could await that. Oh wow, yeah, that head hurt. Okay, so we don't actually need to make this guy async. I just needed to return my task like so I can await it down here. Await. Yeah, I do think that there's probably a fun pattern there. Let's see. I notify. Wait. So that must be here. So we need something that looks like this. Slap that guy on. And then whatever you need, you can have. Okay, so then what do you need next? You need a for get result. Let's see. So this is that. And now it's happy. Oh, I should not be allowed to do this. I should absolutely not be allowed to do this. Okay, so I think what we're going to do is we're just going to set that there. There's something so horrendously wrong about this. Oh, struct fields. Oh, because it's a struct. Fix that. I don't want to think hard. We'll just make it a class. Because the framework, they do stuff for like performance reasons. And honestly, the performance of this app is not something I care about. It could have atrocious performance, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Okay, so I think that's good enough. So what we've got here is something that we can await, and then more importantly, what I'm sort of interested in seeing is the invocations here. I'm going to take off the throw. And I'm pretty sure if I don't call this continuation, it's going to hit this await line and we're never going to get down to here. Because the async keyword in C# causes the compiler to rewrite your method such that the first task, when it hits the await, back up. Async methods, when they are invoked, they run synchronously up to the point of the first await. When they hit the first await, that's where the compiler rewriting comes into play. And the method is rewritten such that the task is started and it registers up for the completions and everything to say, okay, when this thingy is done, now I run the stuff below the await. Which means you get to write your method in what looks like a nice functional synchronous pattern, but under the hood, you got all this fancy state machine stuff for dealing with exceptions and unwrapping and throwing and all that jazz. We write 5 characters, compiler does tons of work, which is awesome. But I'm pretty sure my awaiter is going to show as already completed. And there's some optimizations inside of the TPL, so the task parallel library, the thing with the task and what enables async and await, that has some fancy performance short-circuiting, such that if a task is already completed, it will continue on synchronously. It won't register for the callback and double back. And I'm pretty sure that because I'm basically saying I'm always complete, this is very similar to how like task.completed task works. Because I'm already complete, it should just continue on. But I'm pretty sure, and I can't remember whether onCompleted is going to get invoked or not, but I'm pretty sure onCompleted is probably, by not invoking this action and letting it die, I'm pretty sure that's going to kill everything after it. Not 100%. More like 60%. It's going to be less after I run it, but we'll see. Probably should have set more breakpoints. Put a breakpoint there. We'll catch it early and often. Okay, so we come in here. That makes sense. Please enter your name. We'll write that out to the console, which, not surprising, that comes out to the console. I bet on onCompleted won't be hit. Get a waiter. Is completed true. Get result. Ah! And then we move on. Interesting. Please enter your name. Okay, so the question is, given it gets called when the property changes into true, I'm going to agree with you, especially based on what we just saw here. So we're going to completely ignore this. And actually, I'm going to make it more obvious, throw new, not implemented. I'm going to put this back. Because that pretty much, if anybody sees that, will guarantee that they know it doesn't get called. Now, get result does get called. And so, because the intent of this little application is to be somewhat surprising for a talk, I feel like I should put something here. And I'm going to rename this. So, my awaitable, because I think that's a little more clear of what's going on. So, given that, what should I do here? What would be somewhat surprising? Oh, there's a thought. There is a thought. I'm wondering if I pull this little bit of code out of the module initializer and bury it inside of the awaiter. Because rewriting a string value because you awaited a method is definitely something I would count as surprising. That could be fun. That could be very, very fun. Yeah, I'm thinking, because I've got other things that we can dump into that module initializer. I'm thinking that might be a little bit more fun. Yeah, let's do that. So let's move you out. And I think this means I can get rid of this little bit of code too. No, I can't. Oh, well. Okay, so, explanation. The only reason this code exists here is because in order to have this thing appropriately rewrite it, that string needs to be loaded. The type needs to be initialized. And in C#, types aren't initialized until the first time they're seen. Now, I'm pretty sure this type will be initialized at the point this method is invoked. because in C Sharp, well, let me back up. In C and other low-level programming languages, it's quite common to see patterns where people heavily advocate for declare all your variables at the top of your method, and then use them down below. That's a very common pattern, and there's a reason for it in that there is performance gains to be had by having your stuff declared up front. Is size of sufficient to statically instantiate it? Yes. The question is, where do I put the size of? And initially, I feel bad for typing that syntax. Yes, because size of is meant for measuring like structs for serialization. It is not meant for what we're going for. The only problem is I don't think it's sufficient to cause the string to be loaded and interned. Because just doing new var wasn't enough for it, because this string is declared as a literal inside of the toString method. Now, if I pulled this guy up, and I had initially started with this at one point as like a local constant, that would get hit by the static initialization. But because I just put it straight in line here, it doesn't actually land there. And so I need to get the string actually initialized and interned, which means I need that method to get hit first. So I think I do need it. So we're going to just, and I should probably update my comment next to it, because that is, ensure the string is initialized and interned. Boom. So that gets us to there. That gets us to there. We'll come back. There will be other things to put into here, but let's confirm that much works. So for now, we're just going to run it and verify that it works, but I think I want it to be conditional behavior, because that is even more fun. Please enter your name, blah, 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 blah. There, good, we got Joe. So it works as expected. That's perfect. But it would be better if it were conditional. So, for example, I think what I want to do is await logger right line. And I think what we're going to do is hi name. Just referring to var2 string will not enter the string. It's in its body. Correct. Yeah. So if you were to just pull that thing out with like a name of, or well, I guess name of doesn't really count. Just grabbing a hold of like the method info for it wouldn't quite do it, or even shoving that into a delegate wouldn't quite do it, because when a method is first invoked at the IL, all of your local variables in C# get declared at the top. So for the same idea of how in like C or C++ declaring stuff at the top will give you that performance benefit, the IL, there is no real ordering to your local variables. All your locals get declared at the top. The whole concept of like scoping in these curly braces, that's just something the compiler enforces. That is not enforced at the IL at all. The compiler is what says, hey, if you're inside these braces, this variable is the only thing allowed to, I don't let you reference it outside of it. But once it gets compiled to IL, this age variable exists as a local, and that goes up to the beginning of the method. The other fun thing to be aware of in C# is the order that you write your code inside of a method isn't the order it's guaranteed to execute in. And that often bothers people a great deal. Is at runtime, the runtime may decide, you know what? It's actually more efficient if I do these calls in the reverse order. Now, there is a... obviously, it doesn't just willy-nilly reorder stuff. Because if it did, there would be bugs all over the place. It's very intelligent about knowing, hey, this thing depends on this, which depends on this. So there is like this implicit ordering. For example, it knows that it can't do this line until it gets the name. Like oftentimes in the code, it's very easy to determine that level of ordering. But there are times, especially if you've got like a whole bunch of variable declarations, where maybe doing things like, grouping all the 32-bit ints together, helps because things, now the buckets line up right. So there are times where your code does get executed in a different order than what you wrote it in. It won't occur in debug mode. It'll have to be in release mode with optimizations turned on in order for it to actually have a prayer of doing that. And if you want to absolutely control it, you can pull up the APIs for memory barriers, which can be fun. So, okay, back to my thought though. My thought is we're going to put in this line right here because I want it to look like it worked. And my thought is what we do is we wait until we see a string come through that contains Bob, and then we decide we don't like Bob anymore. That's my thinking. Because, and so this guy now needs some conditional. So, bool erase Bob. That seems appropriate. Sure, that sounds great. So I'm going to leave this here, even though it shouldn't be strictly necessary once we do this, because what we're doing is we're intentionally allowing the first one to go through. Yeah, we're going to let the first one go through, because I think for the talk that will actually make it slightly more surprising for a lot of people, in that the idea will be they'll see, please enter your name. I enter Kevin. It's going to report hi Bob, and then down here it's going to report Joe, which then opens up for a nice discussion on the var class and the string of Bob, and then the question goes, well, wait, where did Joe come from? Right? I think that will be pretty epic. I think that will go very well. Since the CPU has multiple internal pipelines. Oh, yes. I try not to think about assembly code. IL is as low as I like to go. There was a project I was on at one point where I had to write assembly for a real-time chip. So it was on a BeagleBone Black. And we were doing some stuff that had some very low latency requirements, like nanosecond measurement time. And I'm trying to remember, the real-time chip on the BeagleBone Black has some like ridiculous accuracy of 10 nanoseconds or something ridiculous, where you literally can count your assembly instructions to figure out the latency of your algorithm. It was pretty cool. I have to admit, it was awesome to see it work, because usually C# I am like, the performance of your code is not usually, because of your language choice. But I was like, there's no way I can match that. It's like, it was cool to have something that was so deterministic and so fast. And it was really cool. So one of the only times I worked on a project writing code that could have physically killed me. We were building some industrial printers for making PCBs. And so I got to write the software to control like the stepper motors and all that fun jazz, which was fun because I would sit on the platform while coding it, and so I could ride up and down. I showed my boss a video one day. It was the world's most expensive footstool, but it was awesome. Okay, so we need to get erase Bob to make its way all the way in. So get awaiter is going to be my awaitable. So this guy is going to need to know, let's see, public bool erase Bob. That'll be fine. Normally I would argue this isn't supposed to be set outside. It's only supposed to be set once. Use something like the init keyword, or do something with other stuff, but it will go with init. That's fine. That way, if anybody's unfamiliar with this syntax. So this is something new that got added C#9. The init keyword is basically a relaxed version of set, because before all we had was either get set, or you could do like private set or similar, which was fine. What init does is it relaxes the rule just a little bit and says this property is only settable in a constructor or in an object initializer. So erase Bob gets string contains. So if we contain Bob, we erase Bob. I'm actually a little... This is going to get a little interesting, simply because this string will also be interned. And we're going to edit this string. Oh, what a tangled web we weave. Okay, awaitable, erase Bob. Yeah, so this just feels so wrong. It feels so wrong, and yet I'm having so much fun doing it. So perfect. It says, "Hi Bob, please enter your birthday." And then now we're Joe. It worked like a charm. Oh, I love it. Oh, this is absolutely horrible. No one should ever do this ever, 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 ever. Okay, so we still need to do abuse formattable string. Yeah. There is so much bad in all of this. Okay, so move to logger class. Move to my awaitable. Did all Bobs become 1, 2, 3s? No, but all Bob became Joe, and it's not necessarily all Bobs. It's all interned Bobs. So, for example, the string interning largely works when it's able to identify the string itself. So, for example, the compiler knows that this string is equal to the other string literal Bob that we have, and et cetera, et cetera. So it can save space, not create 3 strings, have 1 string, and just reference them all the same. So all of those intern strings have been changed. However, if you have like a string that's coming in that's being like built up with concatenation and dynamic stuff, unless you actually like intentionally try to intern that string, it's going to be, it will not be changed. So I'll put it that way. So not all Bobs, all interned Bobs. Interned, not intern Bobs. So if there is a Bob out there who is an intern somewhere, don't take this person. The other thing to note is because of this unsafe stuff, I'm very intentionally picking 2 strings that are the same length. Otherwise, you have to deal with like the null termination. Oh, so you can change Bob to Bob, and then next time change it Bob. I'm counting Bob. Oh, yes, you can totally do that. I'm sensing some immediate hostility towards all Bobs. Okay, so we're going to move this over to task extensions. Okay, so that's there, and that's fine-ish, except for I want to... I don't want these files visible. And I would like to... Does it not open recent, go up a directory? So what we want to do is we would like to move all of you guys out into the bad stuff folder, because that's where all the fun things go. Move. Okay, perfect. Can you change it to a string of different length or longer than 16? Ah, so therein lies a... Not really, but kind of. So this gets... Once you start doing bad stuff with unsafe, you can start to shoot yourself in the foot a little bit. So the fixed keyword in C#, because C# is a garbage collected language, the garbage collector gets to choose when it wants to run, and when it goes to run, it basically freezes everything and says, okay, I'm going to find everything that's no longer referenced, clean it up, and then more importantly, it may compact and move things around. So in terms of like memory references, where your object is located in memory can move around on you seemingly at random. What the fixed keyword does is tell the compiler, hands off, this thing needs to stay right here and not move out from under me. The GC shouldn't come near the intern string. No, it shouldn't come near the intern string, but because it can move pointers around on you, you need to fix the pointer in place so that it doesn't move at all where you're at. It wouldn't necessarily clean up intern strings, but in order to get the pointer, you still need to use the fixed keyword to grab it. There are some other like Marshall, the Marshall class where you can get it stuff and go after it. Technically, the intern dictionary can change at runtime. The static methods on string can do that. So there is a chance that stuff could move around. I don't think there's a way to take it out, though. I don't believe there's a way to get it out. So in theory, it should only grow. Regardless, because the GC can move stuff around, and actually it may actually move where the intern string could be located in memory. Because everything can shift. Your entire memory thing can shift because your process starts, OS allocates some bit of memory for you. You're playing inside of that, but the GC can move you all around. Because I should say your process starts, the runtime starts, it's what the OS is given the memory to. It can move around anything inside of it wherever it pleases. And I don't believe there's anything guaranteeing you that it wouldn't move around. The GC shouldn't clean up anything out of the intern string area, but I don't think it's safe to say that it wouldn't move it. Because it does shift things around and compact and effectively do like a little defrag type thing to try to optimize it out. So you do need to pin your items basically for some period of time so that hypothetically if the GC were to start off and go running, it wouldn't move this around on you in the middle because that could be bad. The other problem is you can very easily walk off the end of your array just like you can in all the other fun languages. And I would probably have to go and look because I don't think you can assume that like the next intern string in the dictionary is going to be the one right after this or any of that stuff. So that could get weird pretty fast. So I know you can definitely walk off the end of your array and then start doing bad things. So changing it to a different length, I believe you can get away with shorter if you null terminate. Don't quote me on that, but I believe you can null terminate and shorten the strings. Null terminate and obviously clear out the rest of the memory to the end. And then the string should register as having a shorter length. I don't believe you can actually go through and make it longer because that would require making sure that you have the memory available to do that. And at that point, now you're talking about being able to allocate the memory and that kind of thing, which you can do. And in C#10, they're actually adding in some new memory management stuff, which will make this even more abusable, which is awesome. And I really question the few people who need it. I'm sure there's valid use cases. They're just probably this big. That's the awesome part with where C# is now is my boss, one of the questions he loves to ask people when talking about C# is, what features would you add to the language? And very often the audience or whoever he's talking to won't necessarily have a lot of answers. There's a few people that usually have their pet feature of I really want like discriminated unions or similar, right? There are those kind of few things where it's like I really want this one feature from my pet language in it or that kind of thing. But other than that, there's not a lot there. And it says something about the maturity of the language when people ask, what would you like? And they're like, I don't know. So it's kind of cool. I feel bad for never having tried to mutate a string to see if the length changes. I think you should feel proud of yourself is the appropriate bit there. My door is opening. Hello? Thank you. It's my daughter's birthday this weekend, and apparently I've been deemed to taste test the cupcake for the party. Metaprogramming. I want regular C# code that expands at compile time into regular C# code. Source generators? It's not all the way there, but it's pretty close. So C#9 did add source generators where you can have C# write C# at compile time and have it included in the assembly. There are rules though. Yeah, it's almost there. And the it's all additive is the big kicker rule. But when you combine it with some of the tricks here, you can start to do some really bad stuff. Wait, included in the assembly? How? Oh, so when you have a source generator, your source generator is added to a project the same as you would any other assembly reference. And what happens is, as part of the compile time process, Roslyn does its first pass through your code, builds up that AST or syntax tree. It then feeds that into the source generator. The source generator can add to the syntax tree as it sees fit, and then Roslyn finishes the compilation of your assembly with the complete, now added onto AST from the source generator. So the final assembly that comes out the door is all the code you wrote plus any code added to your assembly by source generators. So again, totally additive, but it's pretty cool. Okay, I want to make sure this works real quick. So I don't actually want to test it from here. I want to test it in the state it will be in. Open recent, go down a level. Because this is going to be the view that I intend to demo from. Which feels somewhat misleading. Pretty misleading. Highly misleading. Okay. .NET run. Please enter your name. Kevin. Hi, Bob. Please enter your birthday. I really should not derive that much joy from this. But I do derive a lot of joy from this. This is absolute gold. Okay, so what did we do here? So I do need to come up with something else for the module initializer. I think what I'm going to use the module initializer for is changing the current culture to abuse that formattable string. I think that's where we're going next. But I'm also realizing it's like 1:15 to midnight and I might need to sleep. This is just way too much fun. Adding in my own awaitable. Okay, so commit changes. I think I may need to quit there because I do have an early morning for work tomorrow, and oh man, I'm feeling so happy about this. I do want to get it a little further because I think if I could squeeze in the formattable string and the culture info bits, that's going to make for a good talk. That is going to make, because this code fits on my screen very easily. It's easy enough to describe. People should be able to look at this and very quickly understand what is happening in the code. There's a few bits that are obviously going to be a little confusing of, hey, what is your logger doing? How is this line working? But other than that, like, aside from those little weird things, I think it meets the requirement that I had of as simple as possible. I might go as far as, you know what? Okay, one more thing. I think you can do this now. Logger won't get resolved there, so let's fix that real quick. using system. So I do need a couple of using statements if I do that. I don't actually want either of those. Yeah, I'm thinking top level code just adds to the awesomeness of this. I'm just trying to decide how to appropriately handle this, because what it's squawking about now is that this thing is nested inside a namespace and it can't disambiguate. But we can clean that up. If I do that, that fixes the issue there. I should be able to drop that too. And actually, let's do system console. Let's drop because there's not that many system calls left in here. Oh, I guess date time. Maybe it's better to leave the using system on there. I think what I'm going to do though is drop this guy out of the namespace and put him in the global namespace too. And then that's going to propagate into here. In general, putting everything in the global namespace is a bad idea. This is a great example of the try parse draws too much attention. Yeah. So one of the thoughts that I had on it, and haha, moved that out, and then the extension method no longer resolved. Okay, so that should get me back to there. And that means you need to come out of here as well. I've got this crazy idea of hijacking this. Because I think I can get away with it. And actually we could test this right now. So class date time. Yeah, see, here's the fun part. I could totally hijack this. So my thought is so you'll note, if I declare a date time class in my project in the global namespace, it is what gets selected as the closest match for this symbol here. My thought is to write a source generator that generates this class up. Won't show up anywhere in the source code, and will completely hijack date time try parse. That was a thought. I don't know if it's a good thought. I'm still trying to decide if doing that level of stuff is the same level of IO weaving, where once you pull back the curtain and show it, it's like, well, okay, fine. If you're going to do that, all bets are off. But it's something I could do. But I agree with you. It would be nice. And parse any old good string to the same date. Correct. Now, admittedly, this is not a real string. So there's that. You know what? Maybe it actually makes more sense. You make a good point. Let's do this. Because this makes the code even simpler. And it's not like I can enter an invalid date anyway. Getting very close to even killing off this using statement. Again, my goal was to get as much WAT buried deep into this code as possible. Oh. Okay. I have to share this. In case anybody has not seen this, because I think I'm going to end my stream here in just a minute. Because I use the word WAT a lot, and if you are unfamiliar with that term, that little video is well worth the few minutes of time. It's a little old, but it is pure gold. Pure gold. If he doesn't rope you in the first few seconds, I don't know. It's probably late and you should go to bed. Okay, let's push this up. Let's see. Top level statements. Cleanup of need this code. Okay. So that gets it down pretty close. I'm liking it. I'm liking it. I think I may poke at it a little bit. Like I said, I think I want to do the culture stuff in the formattable string, and then I'll probably try to put together a little script for this talk and see what it takes, because I think that'll probably get me into a very reasonable length. Just pulling back all of the information. I mean, I've prattled on about what I was doing for nearly 3 hours at this point. So now the goal is to make it short. But I also had to figure out what was going on in a couple cases. So plus, because there's a lot of WAT buried deep in this program. To call this unsurprising is not the least bit of an understatement. So for everyone new, thank you for coming and hanging out. Always awesome to get new subscribers. I try to do a coding stream every Thursday night. So I'm Pacific Standard Time, so West Coast US. So I don't start until after I get my kids in bed, which means about 9 p.m. for me. So if you are interested, the links for all of my socials and videos and that kind of thing are all buried in there. But always happy to take questions. Also very happy to get distracted. So I love interaction, love questions. Have no problem even if they are totally different. Simple Var, thanks for hanging out. I love the way you think, by the way. It's been awesome. And yes, I like the syntax color one. That's why I want to show it in VS Code, because I want it to look real enough without being all the way real. Interesting. Why is that showing? Why is that showing funny? Oh, interesting. Oh. Might have to play with this. Clearly works, but OmniSharp, no bueno. I'll have to decide. I'll think about that, because there's clearly some stuff here that OmniSharp is not hip to the massive weirdness of which I have subjected it to. So, with that, I will say happy coding. Everyone have a good night. See y'all later.